Today I'm speaking with Svend from Copenhagen. Svend, you were born in Denmark in 1971 and grew up on a dairy farm, working with animals and machinery from a young age. At 19, you embarked on an agricultural exchange program in the US, which sparked the love for travel and adventure. After serving in the Danish military as part of an Army Reserve Officer program, you pursued studies in electrical engineering, later adding a second degree in business administration. While you built a successful career in engineering and leadership, a study trip to Japan in 1999 made you realize you wanted something different. So you quit your job to fully embrace project living life without a fixed plan. For 1.5 years, you taught and traveled in Asia and even sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to South America. But at 30, you returned to Denmark, earning a master's degree in business administration and re-entering corporate life. Over the past 2 decades, you have been working as an IT leader in banking, insurance, and product innovation, leading large-scale projects, programs, and heading various departments. Your military background remained a part of your journey until Denmark downsized its army. Today, we'll dive into your story, your shift from the farm to global adventures, and how you see the balance between career, freedom, and lifelong learning. Welcome, Svend.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you today. How are you feeling when you hear this?
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Have I really accomplished all that stuff? But I guess when I take the long lenses on, I think, yeah, that's probably how it has been. Not all has been planned. Some of it is something I've been experienced on the way, but I always had some ambitions on what I want, but they have changed over time. So like my background on the farm in Jutland in Denmark, I guess that gave me some of my basic values. Like when you are living on a farm, well, the cows, they need to be fed every day. The fields need to be taken care of. When it's harvest time and it's not raining, then you're working in the fields.
Yeah.
And I guess those values they're important to me today. I feel responsibility for a lot of the stuff I'm doing. And I think that was a basic work on a farm.
Could you name those values? What would that be?
I think that is to when there's something that has to be done, you do it, so you take responsibility for it. But also, like when you're working with animals, you have to be caring about those animals. Otherwise, they won't cooperate.
Yeah.
Like if you are taking a cow to a fence or something like that, if you're not working together with it, it will run away. So, and I think that's something I use today also.
Yeah, so really it's like also very caring, huh? To be and
Yeah,
sensitivity to be actually able to communicate with animals, I think.
yeah. And we had some of these programs for especially young people in the farming areas, like it was called 4-H, where you had like a season you had to take care of a cow or a calf or a tractor or a sheep or something like that. You had to make reports on it, and you could go to displays with it. It was part of the farm life in Jutland at that time.
Wow. And you said earlier in our preparation call that you were driving a tractor already at the age of 10.
Yeah.
I think every boy is dreaming about that. How is
Yeah,
that?
that was great. That was kind of you get a responsibility. You have a tractor, and I was interested in mechanics and so on. I was not that big and so on, but when it was within a field and so on, it was okay for my father. I had to be able to reach the pedals and be able to stop and so on, but I could do actual farm work at that age.
So actually it's a bit of child labor, huh?
Yeah, but I didn't see it like that.
Yeah.
To me, I was just part of a family having a farm.
Yeah, I think it goes
And
for
we
very
had,
many families like that, huh? Yeah.
yeah, and then we had 2 farm hands also helping. They became also kind of the family. They were living at the farm. So that was kind of a small family, and we had the other farms nearby, and we helped each other. When there was a problem, we drove and helped them, and if there was some machinery that was broke, then we could borrow some from the neighbors and so on. So that's kind of a community among the farmers.
So how did an average day for a child on a farm look like?
I guess I had to go to school. That was something my
Of
parents
course,
wanted me to
yeah.
do. My father, he made the lunch package for me. I went to school, and then after school, when I came home, either it was helping in the with the cows, taking care of it. There are certain routines that they have to be fed and so on every day,
Hmm.
or it was working in the fields. And then in the evening, it was either going to some of my interests, like rifle shooting. That was one of my
Ah,
interests.
shooting, yeah, of course,
Uh,
true.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then do some homework as well to the school. But it was not really the homework I liked most.
Hmm. Hmm. So you enjoyed the
So
farm work, actually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it as work. It was just part of daily life.
Hmm.
And also you could do something like learn weldings, making machinery, repairing, and so on at a young age. And it was kind of real machinery, changing oil in the tractors and that kind of stuff. So
Were there moments when you felt like, oh no, today I really don't feel like farming or farm day. I want to do something else. I want to play with my friends or whatever.
if it's raining, then it's not nice to
Mm.
be out.
In the mud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But sometimes, yes, it would be nice. But there were also farm boys on some of the other farms, and we also did some fun stuff together. But it was often related to farm work at that time. So, but we did also go to like football and so on when there was time for it. So,
So your dad was okay with that if you sometimes skipped a day, or were you really like calculated in the farming schedule?
yeah, I had to go to school. They emphasized that. But if it was really, really busy, then it was okay. I helped at the farm, like in harvest time or something like that. I recall I think I was in eighth grade, and the cows they had run out of the fence, and
Oh,
that's a big problem. 70 cows running all over
oh
the place.
no.
So my mother called the school and said Sven has to come home and help getting the cows into the fence again.
Yes. And how
But
did you manage that? Like how that does it work normally like that? Do you have like dogs, separate dogs helping you, or do you running
no,
behind
no,
them with a bunch of friends, or how do you do it?
yeah, we usually they have kind of a way they want to stick together. So when we find a few of them, then they are almost always together, and then we can drive them into the fence again. So, but it was kind of weird and a bit embarrassing at the school that he called now Sven has to go home to take care of the cows.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It,
It must be a bit embarrassing,
so
huh? Yeah.
yeah,
But on the other hand, also a very interesting story, completely different perspective on a childhood upbringing, especially compared to the nowadays times, huh? When people are
yeah,
just
yeah,
having their smartphones in their hand the whole time.
yeah.
Wow. And what would you say was your most precious, when you think about it now spontaneously, the most precious memory you have from that time?
I think it was the freedom I had. I could do so many things with real machinery and big stuff at a very, very young age, and I had to have responsibility for get it completed. I think that was when I think here afterwards, that was probably the most precious thing about it.
Hmm.
And there was some freedom also involved in it.
Hmm.
Not so much like all the disco and all the other stuff like somebody else did. We did not have that much about that, but I liked it.
Yeah,
That's what I have seen. I didn't see anything else.
of course, it's the way you grew up. Yeah.
Yeah,
And if you think back, did you ever imagine that your life would take such a diverse and global turn?
I guess I always had ambitions,
Hmm.
and I was fascinated by technology. There was a magazine called Illustrated Science, which I looked at the library, with a lot of technology, tech stuff, and so on. And I think that was really interesting to look at that. So I looked at that and studied that a bit. And also, like physics became one of my interesting courses in school.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I always had the dilemma: should I keep farming or should I do something else? I'm sure my parents they would have liked me to
Hmm.
continue farming, but I think I wanted something else.
Hmm.
And I could also see the hardship in farming at that time.
Hmm.
It became tougher and tougher. being a
Mhm.
farmer.
I mean, talking about
So
the 70s, right? Yeah, 70s and
yeah,
80s, yeah.
70s, yeah.
And so you said like you had this conflict, let's say the inner conflict of, oh, should I keep farming or should I go somewhere else? How did you feel how to decide? How did you figure it out for yourself?
It took some time, and I think when I went to gymnasium afterwards,
Hmm.
after the public school, that was kind of the first step. That was not a natural step for if I wanted to be a farmer. And then I got exposed to a bigger city and with people from different backgrounds and so on. And that's probably it changed my perspectives, I think.
Hmm. Because you said
Uh,
it's also very unnatural for that time, at least, that people from farm background actually went to gymnasium. So
yeah,
what would you say? Was it your parents emphasizing this, or was it you? Were you just a special character looking for something else, or how would you describe that?
I think it was me because I wanted something else. Uh, and in fact, at the primary school, they said, maybe I should not go to gymnasium. Maybe that's not something for you. But I wanted it, and I got enrolled. And my parents, they of course said, yes, if you want that, that's of course what you should do. They always supported me, and if I wanted to do something else, then I should definitely do it. And I think that's a
Beautiful.
precious value. Yeah,
Nice that they were so supportive. And if
yeah.
you think now back about that time, is there still something you're taking away from that farm life that is maybe in your heart somehow that still has an impact on your daily life nowadays?
Yeah, I think the responsibility, like when you have a farm, it has to work, even if it's bad days or you are sick and so on. And I take also that to work now. If I have my teams and so on, it has to work, even if there are bad days and something is not working. We have to figure out how to get it to work. We can't just leave it or skip it or something like that.
Hmm.
So I guess that feeling of responsibility and also being okay, proper, and nice. I think also that was a characteristic in my childhood. I
Hmm.
try to do that as use that as well in my corporate life today.
Yeah, wow.
So
Inspiring and interesting. I think there's such a diverse background. I'm thinking of, and then you somehow not only made the leap to the gymnasium, but then you also decided, okay, I'm going to the US for an international program. Where did that
yeah,
influence come from?
in fact, it was a bit of a coincidence. Like in Denmark, when you're a boy and you're 18, you have to decide about military service. And I also had to go to this lottery in Denmark when you are 18. So if you get a low number, then you have to join. If you get a high number, you don't have to join.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's how it works.
You can be lucky and very unlucky. It depends on the
Yeah,
perspective, huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
But usually there are a lot more who volunteer than so that basically no one who are forced into the military, not even today. So
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so I got a fairly low number, and then I decided I want something more than that. And at that time, my sister had also been in the army and been a sergeant. So I said, that sounded interesting. So I applied for the reserve officer training program, and I got enrolled. It was a pretty tough uh, test to see if I was able for it, but I could only start a bit later, not right after gymnasium. So there was a break. So then I decided, agriculture exchange in the US, that sounds interesting. So I enrolled for that program and I got started in the US, I think 3 days after gymnasium stopped.
Wow. And I mean, I'm imagining you being in this farm life and then, okay, gymnasium stopped. How did you think about an US program? Like, where did you see it? Where did you read about it?
That was about farming. There are quite a few who go abroad for some
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
as part of the farming program and do some learning in Australia, US, or Sweden, or other countries. My father did that as well.
Ah, okay. Hmm.
He went to Iceland and Sweden.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
so I guess that was a step a bit back to the farm life again,
Hmm.
but it was also in the big US.
And what did
So
you
that
what what did you learn there?
First of all, living in another country, that was
Yeah.
something I had to get used to.
Mm-hmm.
A different culture, like the culture in the Midwest in the US is characterized being a lot of local village life, small villages, and huge areas with farming, uh, where everybody works in the fields, in the big fields with huge machineries, driving trucks and huge tractors and so on.
Everything is huge in the US.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was also fun for me, like driving big trucks and tractors and so on. And I was like 18 or 19 at that time. And then living in a small village, I think there was something like 1,000 or 2,000 people living in that village. And then there was something like 6 different churches also. So
Mm.
that was church was really an important thing
Yeah.
in those villages. And then I had a host family
Mm-hmm.
who was really friendly and helped me and assisted me. And there was also a guy from Switzerland and Australia at the
Oh.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we were 3 of us at 2 farms. And at that time, they were experimenting with growing potatoes to McDonald's. And they had not had experience with that. And I know something about potatoes from Denmark. So I could also contribute with something about that. So that
Wow.
was fun.
Yeah. And how old were you? 19 or something.
19 or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
And how long did you stay there?
I stayed at the farm for almost half a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then became really, really cold in the north
Mm-hmm.
of the US. And then I went on a 3 months road trip in the US, all the way around the US to big cities and so on. Yeah, I know you like road tripping as well.
Yes, yes. I'm just imagining. I haven't
So
been to the US for a road trip though. That's still a big, big bucket list point for me. And you went with a friend.
no, that was when I met over there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He was also on the exchange program, uh, and yeah, it was fun. And we did not. Yeah, I had a car over there, and then we decided, yeah, we'll go road tripping. Let's go to Chicago and to Washington and so on. And then we did not really have any plans. We just took it as, yeah, we'll find out on the way. We had a tent in the trunk, and then we just went out seeing stuff. And I remember I got some guidebooks from AAA, the association in the US. I got some books from Florida also. Shouldn't we go to Florida also? Yeah, yeah, why not? And then in Florida, decided California. That looked really, really nice.
Mm.
Let's go to California
Wow, all the
also.
way.
Yeah.
So where did you
So
start? Where was your farm and what state was it located?
it was in North Dakota, in
Okay.
the border to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went all the way around and also to California and then back to North Dakota. So that was like a 3 months program living in part-time in a car and part-time on campsites. And if it was raining, we find a cheap motel or something like that.
Oh,
So
I'm imagining all these American road movies now with we have seen.
yeah,
Oh, they're available around the world. And is it like that, or is that just a bit of a cliche what they're showing in the movies?
no, it is a bit like that. A lot of kilometers or miles driving and so on, and meeting a lot of people. Sometimes we went out to small, strange places and talked to, wonderful people with very different backgrounds. And also learning that the US is not like one country culture-wise.
Mm-hmm,
There are
mm-hmm,
huge differences between the different parts of the
mm-hmm,
US.
mm-hmm.
And that was interesting to me. And like when I called my mother and said, we are driving down Chicago tonight. Oh, isn't that dangerous? And so on. And sure to lock your car and so on. But I was just, well, I can do it. Why not?
It was in the 80s, right? We're talking about the 80s, I think. Oh, beginning of
Early 90s.
early 90s. Okay, well,
Yeah, yeah.
wow, an
So
inspiring adventure already in that time.
it's definitely something I recall now as a big thing in my life. That
Mm-hmm,
was that US experience.
mm-hmm,
I had not expected it would be such a life-changing thing for me, but being able to do something oneself, like buy a car and just drive around in a huge country, meeting people, learning things, don't really know what one should do, but figuring it out on the way. I think that was great for me. I learned probably that I could do a lot more than I expected I could do, and also I did not have to have everything planned.
I
So,
love
so
that
that
idea. Yeah, I know. I remember I've been on big road trips through Australia, Southern Africa, where we met, huh? Where we
yeah,
met,
that's true.
and we met on the big road trip from South Africa all the way to the thousand African countries. And
Yeah,
in Europe, I've been along a lot on the road, so I know that feeling, and just you watch or you see through the window, and then you have the sky and all this different architecture, countryside coming up. It's beautiful, and then the music
yeah.
and this feeling is very special. I really understand it. And if you look back now, if you reflect on it, what would you say was the biggest change or the biggest impact on your life from that trip?
I think it was that I was able to decide whatever I want. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have
Mm.
to go to school this week and I had to go to the farm and help and so on, but I could choose what I want. And also, like when we went to some of the places, it's nice here, let's stay here for some days and so on. And I think that was good for me to experience that. But also meeting other people. Like I've been
Hmm.
living in the western part of Denmark. It's been very local
Hmm.
Danish, and then going to the US and Canada and so on. That was eye-opening for me. And I could I worked pretty well in that situation, so I liked it. So and that's something I bring with me also. That well I could do the US, so why not the rest of the world?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that was
uh,
a starting point, huh? Yeah.
yeah.
I have one more question. Is farming in the US different than farming in Denmark or in Europe? What would you say? Or at least what that time?
At that time, farming is bigger. So like when you are on farms, I think the farm I lived at, that was something like 7,000 acres.
Hmm.
And I think in Denmark, that's
Half of
tip.
Denmark.
Yeah, but it's like I think a typical farm in Denmark at that time would be something like 200 acres.
Yeah, okay, wow.
And the size of the machinery are a lot bigger. And the fields are like 1 mile by 1 mile because it's kind of a grid, because it's kind of new agricultural areas. And then I think also it's very commercial. They're looking a lot about prices on crops. When should we start driving soybeans to Chicago and so on? And I think probably the conditions, the working condition, are probably more mature in Denmark than they were in the US at that time. Uh,
Interesting. Hmm.
but uh, but I guess they grow crops, and part of it was also more advanced than in Denmark at that time. Uh, and the family I stayed at were really helpful to me and could see an agricultural uh, experience over there. Went also to some studies in Minnesota as part of the exchange program, learning about agriculture in the US. So it is different, large scale.
And even though you didn't go back to agricultural and farming, I think
Now,
was it even more clear through that program, or how did it happen like that?
no, well, I had to go to the army, so the next
Oh yeah, yeah,
2 years and so on, that was decided for me. So there was a path laid out, very intense training program. So that was what occupied me for the next 2 years. Uh, and and after that, I think I have skipped the thought of going back to agriculture.
Mhm.
Uh, Probably got some more experiences and interest and so on. So I think the military training, the officer training was developing me in another way because there I had to uh, do a lot of physical training, but also leadership training and learn stuff in a high pace, and also at a young age be responsible for leading others. That was something because you get some responsibility for that as well. Uh, and that was good for me. It's been one of my best education I had.
Mhm.
That was definitely the military experience
Mhm.
because we got trained in a lot of like working together as a team under very demanding circumstances and also being able to teach others to do stuff. That was that was a life challenging program for me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So
How can I imagine a day like that in the army? Like when you said like really life demanding challenges, what can you share something about it? What is a life demanding challenge during these programs?
yeah, well, the first year is the sergeant program, and then you have the officer training. But then you get 1 year where you have to teach or be a leader for a platoon of like 35 people. So you are responsible for their life
Mm-hmm.
basically when they
Mm-hmm.
are in the military. That is that they learn whatever they need to learn, but also if there are some individual issues, problems, and so on, you have to take care of that as a leader. Uh, and you have to ensure that they go to those sites where they have to go to, and we get those teams to work together, and also part of a bigger organization. Uh, that's that's challenging, but at least the military is used to that kind of thing. So having really young leaders, that's
Mm-hmm.
something the Danish military at that time was really, really good at. Uh, so it was a safe environment to be a leader in, but you got definitely exposed to a lot of challenges, pressures, and so on for those 2 years. But it was good for me, and that also showed me I could do something. And I think I was okay at being both a sergeant and an officer.
Mm-hmm.
Also compared to my other colleagues at that time, we did an okay job.
Mm-hmm. And is it
So,
also like you see it in the movies, like you have to get up very early and you have to
oh,
crawl through the mud and then yes, sir, da 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 da. How is it?
oh.
Like, do you have any physical activities? Anything that's really physically challenging?
There's a lot of physical stuff because you have to be in shape.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing about really shouting about people and so on, that's more kind of a movie thing. Nobody can work with that in the long time. So in the military, when you have all the exercises and so on, it's kind of more pedagogical training, and we have pedagogical principles and so on. So the shouting stuff that does not really belong in the real military. It's more a movie thing. But if we are, I have never been in kind of a real war
Mm-hmm,
situation,
mm-hmm.
but when you are in the trenches and so on, then you should be able to shout because you can't hear anything else. But in daily life in the military, you're not shouting at each other, and you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody will
Very
lose respect for you.
respectful. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were really preparing for the practice, but you were not in a practical situation. It was just more theory in that time for you.
It was theory and training.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those in my platoon were after I left the military. They went to the former Yugoslavia as part of the
Mm.
Balkan Wars. And they did an okay job as far as I know.
Wow,
So,
yeah. I met some people because we were traveling in the Balkans and in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We talked to some people who have survived the war. That was a very interesting experience and also story
yeah,
from their perspective, of course. So, well, I can imagine it's also a bit of a conflicting situation sometimes, huh? Coming from the peaceful farm
yeah,
life and then being prepared for this kind of life.
yeah.
If you think back, what you learned the most about yourself in that time?
I think I learned to probably believe more in myself.
Hmm.
That also, if it's something I'm not kind of good at, I believe I can do it. I can learn it, and I can execute in it, and people believe in me. I think that's something I gained at least from the military. So and also organizing stuff on a larger scale when it's not just organizing one's own stuff, but it's also organizing for several people. That's something I learned at that time. Uh, and I think also get to motivate people. Like some of the stuff is not really that inspiring, but trying to motivate people and why we should learn it and keep focus on the why all the time. That's also something I learned from the military.
Hmm.
Uh, and then I had some really good colleagues. Also the other officers and sergeants and so on who also worked like with leadership. They were really good inspirations. And a lot of them are my good friends still today.
Oh yeah, how
So
nice.
so so we got some really good bonds because we went through a lot of different things. yeah, in the middle of the night, in the winter time, crossing rivers and crossing lakes and so on and so on. So we had a lot of challenging experiences where we could see each other in some situation which were challenging and not really the polished ones, but we learned to know each other very well at that time. So one could say that it was like 2 years team building,
Yeah,
something
I
like
can
that.
imagine. I mean, it sounds like you got a lot of self-confidence out of it, and then also a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
leadership skills and all these extra human interpersonal skills, right? And then even
yeah,
though on
yeah,
top you build a lot of nice friendships. Beautiful.
yeah,
I have to say, it sounds like a very beautiful program in this case, and at least in your
yeah,
situation.
yeah. I think it's definitely probably been, yeah, I think it's been the best educational program I've attended. That has been the military. It's where I have evolved myself most and learned most. It has also been the most demanding, but I will really encourage others to go for such trainings. It's really rewarding.
Hmm. Hmm. And then suddenly, from farming to military, you decided to study engineering.
Yeah,
Where did that come from?
I guess I was also like the old, the illustrated science from the library and so on, and technology and so on. The technology thing that was intriguing to me. So I think engineering that was interesting. And my uncle, he was also an engineer, creating phones at that time. So that also inspired me. And then the question was, what kind of engineering should it be?
Mhm.
Should it be mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, chemical engineering, and so on? But I decided it should probably be electrical engineering. Uh, Also, as a child, I've been taking a lot of televisions apart and looking at all the different components and so on. I never was able to put them together again, but I was able to take them apart at least and fixing stuff. And it was, yeah, I decided, and that was also going to Copenhagen
Mhm.
in Denmark at the Technical University of Denmark. So that was also like moving permanently
Yeah.
to to another part of Denmark. That was also great. Kind of meeting again people from Copenhagen and, yeah, all over the country at a really big university. It was inspiring also for me to do that. And I could also see that my military training had matured me a lot,
Mhm.
also compared to others. So it was, I know, like all my papers and so on, it was delivered on time and so on. So so I learned be on time, and I did that with my papers also. So
Was there also another opportunity for you or another idea you had to study rather than engineering? Was there anything else that interested you or that was like, this or that?
no, I think like going and having a university degree was it was not something that was common in my family to have
Hmm.
university
Hmm.
degrees, so I was kind of breaking a bit out on that. But I figured that I could do it and it would be interesting, and then I could always do something else afterwards. Uh, and I think at that time my sister had also taken or started a business university degree, so
Hmm.
she was probably maybe also leading me a bit in the direction. Oh, it's okay to go for universities, even though you're from a farm.
So you're
So
coming from a farm, and besides what everyone else is doing in farm life, you're deciding to go to the US. Then you're coming back, and then you decide, or you have to because of the program, but you go to the military. And then again, you decide to go to the university, what's not so common for your family and the people from the farmland. What would you say is a skill or a kind of character trait or a resource you have that you were trying, kind of always trying to do something new and different?
yeah, I think learning new stuff is something that has always been part of the way I see it. Like getting stuck in something just with a small garden and 10, 20, 30 years in the same surroundings. I don't think really that fits me.
Mhm.
So I think breaking some barriers and learn some new stuff and exploring stuff, I think it's part of me.
Being a curious
Uh,
person. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and also that I'm able to learn new stuff in very different areas. So I think that's yeah, I like that. I can. I can basically learn everything. I don't know, but I can learn a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, and having the will and the enthusiasm and try to do it and get something out of it and be respectful and so on. I think that's important to me.
Having this
So
growth mindset, huh? Kind of, yeah,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
always growing, you're always developing and learning. It sounds like it. It sounds
yeah.
very inspiring. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then I also got some good friends at the technical university, and we did study trips to many places, including to Hong Kong and Japan and Singapore and other minor study trips to other places in Denmark and so on. So we started also to explore, and that was voluntary programs we organized ourselves. And that was a safe part of the university where we had our labs and we had drinking coffee in the afternoon and making papers and experimenting. And shouldn't we make a study trip to Japan? And Japan was one of my favorite countries.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
we did that also as part of it.
And that was the Japan trip that changed everything? Or is
No,
that was even later? Okay, it was a
yeah,
previous Japan trip. Okay, because then
yeah,
you first started working then as an engineer, right?
yeah. Then I started working at Grundfos. It's a large company in Denmark
Hmm.
developing pumps of different kinds. And they had created at that time that they wanted to make power converters so we could regulate the speed of pumps and make them more efficient that way. And then at that, electronics was important of it, upon an important part of those pumps. And then reliability, which was one of my specialties at university, is of course really important because if a pump is sitting like 200 meter below the surface of Sahara, you don't want
Oh,
it to break very often. So working with reliability engineering of microchips and so on, that's what I work with at that time.
ah, again, a very different field. Interesting.
Yeah, and then also when working in a corporate company, there are activities which are also working on developing the company. And then I could see, my leadership skills and
Yeah.
so on,
Hmm.
that came into use again. So, and at that time, I also decided, well, I should probably have some business understanding also. So when I graduated as an engineer, I started right after that with having a part-time program in business administration. And that's why I thought that combining business, leadership, and technology, that would probably be a good starting point for me in my professional career.
Wow. And did you get any support from your parents that time, or did you all afford it by yourself? How is that system in Denmark working?
Now in Denmark, when you're at university, you get some minor scholarship. Everyone gets that,
Wow.
and
Hmm.
yeah, that's
That's
nice. It's
Denmark.
convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and then afterwards, when I worked as an engineer, I did also work part-time in the military as a
Hmm.
reserve
Hmm.
officer,
Hmm.
and then took the business program. It's an evening program where you have 4 years with like 4 hours, 2 nights a week, and then you can, after 4 years, have a business degree. So I did that for those like 3 years at Grundfos, like having it's called HD in Denmark, and working in the military. So that was 3 really busy years, a lot of studying, working in a new company, and working part-time in the military as well. But it was,
I hear you with my psychologist ears. That sounds like a lot of work at the same time, a high risk
yeah,
of burning out or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess it was probably also a bit too tense. So like my calendar were booked, yeah, pretty much all the time, both at work and also in the evenings and preparing for the exams and
Hmm. Hmm.
studying and so on. But I did not get stressed and I did not get burnout. But in October 99, I went on, we have something called folk high school,
Hmm.
Fachhochschule, I think
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
maybe, I don't know if
Fachhochschule
that's
in
it.
German. Yeah. But something like
Yeah,
what is it? Like a common general school and learning
yeah,
program for society in general, huh? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And they have summer programs with like 1 and 2 week programs, and then they have like half year programs, especially for younger people. But they had a 3-week program, which I found really interesting about Japan.
Yeah.
So, of course, Japan.
Of course.
Because I really loved Japan. Also, after being there and meeting the people and so on, I really wanted to learn more about that. So that was like 1 week in Denmark with a lot of people who know different things about Japan, culture, history, making flower decorations, whatever. And we had some learnings about that, and then 2 weeks in Japan afterwards, where the Japanese folk high school association took care of us, and we went to different places in Japan. So
Hmm.
that was a really, really great experience because in Japan it can be difficult to get real close contact with
Yeah,
people.
that's true.
But when you are part of the same kind of organization, then everything is open for you. And I remember one evening, that was some of the local people, they arranged a party for us. That was mainly local farmers, local fishermen, and so on. And basically, none of them really spoke English. So it was a party with, I think, 10 people from Denmark, and then I think 20 or 30 from Japan. One could say that would not be a very fun party, but it's probably been one of my best parties in my
Oh,
life.
really? What
We,
what what made it so special?
because everybody was so open and we couldn't
Mm.
communicate with fingers and so on. And I came from a farm, and they came from a farm and so on. And we had some common language also about that. And they were so open and they wanted to show the food and the surroundings and so on. Really, really good atmosphere and great learning.
Oh,
So,
I get goosebumps
so
from hearing that because I really can understand if you're connecting with so many different diverse people from all around all backgrounds, it's a very connecting and touching moment, right? Yeah.
yeah, it is. So, uh, but yeah, that was at least part of it. But it was also kind of visiting the kind of the countryside of Japan. Like first time was more kind of the high tech part of Japan,
Tokyo,
but this,
yeah.
yeah. But this was in the countryside, so that was nice. So I went on that 3 week tour, and I lived at a farmer's house who was also a computer programmer in Japan.
Ah,
And
again, a
then,
farmers, of course, it's
yeah,
coming back.
yeah. And then we were talking about that I was probably working a bit too hard, and he said, "Well, maybe you should try something different." And I
And he was
know,
able to speak English with you?
yeah, he could
Hmm.
speak
Hmm.
English,
Hmm.
so because he worked with programming.
Okay.
Uh, so when I came home in October, I decided I wanted to quit my job, and I did that with the end of December '99. So that was 1st of January 2000. That was the start of what I call
Restart.
Project Lim. Yeah.
Yes.
And that was kind of challenging for me because I usually have stuff planned, but then I quit my job without knowing what I would. But I decided to go on a long-term folk high school program, which included a trip to India also, and also teaching in India on a folk high school. And that was again a totally different part of the world, and see what they've created a folk high school down there based on the principle from the Danish folk high school and Gandhi and Morgan,
Mm.
a free thinker from the US. So that was interesting to live in that area in India and meeting the young people down there, especially like the women, like they were like the age between 18 and 25,
Hmm.
were kind of taught to make something so they could have their own profession afterwards. That could be a small typewriting
Hmm. Hmm.
shop or something like that. So that was interesting to see the development in India for those young, very poor people in the mountains in the
Hmm.
southern part of India.
I remember
Uh,
my first time in India was when I was also 23. And I was one of these young women as well, but coming, of course, from the privileged white European Western world, right? But I
yeah,
remember meeting all these locals. It was it was my very first big trip, and it was very life changing. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. So, and it was my first time in India also at
Hmm.
that time, and I decided, and that was something I decided on the go. Well, when I'm in India, why not go and see some more of India? So I went traveling in India for a couple of
Hmm.
months afterwards, and then an opportunity came. Why not go to Nepal? I met some exchange students in Nepal who had been in Denmark before, and they said, "Yeah, you should definitely come to Nepal," and walked in the great mountains in the Himalaya and so on, and with a backpack and so on, and meeting like the Sherpa people and the Tibetan people, and learning about the refugees from the Tibet, and yeah, really a good experience for me to do that, like going up in the very high mountains and away from everything, and no roads, no communications, no phones, no nothing. That was great. And then an
Wait,
opportunity.
because I wanted to ask first, because it sounds also interesting. I wanna
Yeah,
understand. Um, because I remember also my times in the Himalayas in the north of India. It was a very special moment for me. What is it? What you would say now is something that you really take away from that time in these areas?
I definitely think like in Nepal, even though it's a very poor country, all the smile and happiness and
Mm.
welcoming
Hmm.
in the very most remote part of the world. Uh, and I think that was eye-opening for me. Houses were not that good, and but people were happy,
Hmm.
and I think that's important lesson. Like when I compare to Denmark, there's a
Hmm.
lot of people who are maybe not that happy, even though from a material side we are in Denmark pretty good in a good situation. But I think people at that time in Nepal showed great happiness, even though they did not really have good material conditions.
Yeah, I understand. And I had the same experience. And in Germany, a lot of people can really always complain and mourn about stuff. And in India or Nepal, all these areas, people are so faithful and grateful
Yeah,
and thankful for life. And they have a different, I don't know, a different approach or something. I really was changed by that experience as well. And what did
yeah.
you experience, or how would you say it today? What is it what you really learned about yourself in that time?
That's a good question. Again, I think that I was able to adapt to live in another
Hmm.
culture.
Hmm.
And again, I could get around figuring out what to do, meet people, getting some broader perspectives of the world and people living in the world. Uh, I think that's something I got from it.
Was there something that
Uh,
really was mind-blowing or shocking, or in any way something, oh, I did not think about that, or was not expecting that? Something that really was maybe also culture shock or anything? Was there something like that?
yeah, I think it was, but and I think basically it was that those, especially the young people at the high school, the openness they had
Hmm.
and the interest they had in
Hmm.
meeting
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
also, that that became apparent for me that in some places that's probably a trait that we could learn something
Hmm.
from somewhere else. They were open and wanted to talk. Uh, and compared to other countries, I don't see that kind of openness
Hmm.
as I did down there. I was invited into their life, and also the local people I visited in Nepal. They opened up, and I came into their private homes, and they offered dinners and so on. Kind of, yeah, that gave some reflections to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I
Uh,
can really support that, what you're saying. I have the same
uh,
experience. Yeah. Mm.
uh, and I think also again experiencing living in visiting some really remote areas for me, that was kind of like trekking and so on has been important to me for many years, and that was probably also inspired from the military because we had a lot of nature experiences, and those nature experiences in, I think, especially in Nepal, were really
Hmm.
mind-blowing for me.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, very remote, and these huge mountains with
Hmm.
snow on the top, and you were walking and walking, and the path you're walking on sometimes they get washed away by mudslides, and then there's no connection to that village for until somebody go and repair the trails again. So compared to Denmark, people can complain if there's a hole in the road or a bump or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
here it's a track that get washed away.
Yeah.
So
Oh God, I imagine, and
mm,
I remember that too. Yeah, and also the mountains have such a grounding energy, right? It's just we're
yeah,
so tiny, and
yeah,
then these massive, massive mountains being there for years and ages, and yeah, it is
yeah.
a very special experience. I remember that too. Yeah.
And part of it was maybe also a bit kind of scary at times. Like I remember I had to fly from one side of Himalaya to another
Hmm.
side at one time, and those small planes down there, I think they could seat like 10 people or something like that. They could not fly above the mountains because the mountains are too high, so they have to follow
Yeah.
the rivers and so on in between. And you could sit and look behind the pilot, and he was sitting with a handheld GPS, and that was the way he was navigating through the Himalayas. And as an engineer, one said, is that safe?" But
Yeah.
but it was, and that's how it works. So, and they got around with less advanced technology navigating in, yeah, tough mountains.
I
So
think these countries sometimes really teach you also, okay, you have to throw all the concepts away and you just have to trust the
yeah,
process, right? Yeah.
yeah, they have adapted to that situation they are in, and they know what they're doing. So, but it was a good experience for me. I
Hmm.
would like to visit more of that world.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm. I understand. And then you had a new opportunity.
yeah, that was in fact when I was in Nepal. Then I had to decide what should then happen afterwards. And my sister had a contact to a guy who had a yacht who were going to South America, and I was put into contact with him, and we decided, yeah, why not? I couldn't join from Copenhagen because I was in Nepal at that time, but I could just join at the Canary Islands. So I joined him at the Canary Islands.
Wow.
Basically, a week after I came back, I just had to graduate in my. I had 1 week exams with my military captain's exam because I had been taking that as a long distance course on the
Ah,
way
okay, as
also.
well. All at
Yeah,
once. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And then went to the Canary Islands on a yacht. Uh, so that was again an adventure. That was not kind of an end date. We had not really decided, but it was yeah, why not? So that was with the captain and another guy, and then we were three guys on a yacht. And then
Wow.
that was another life for half a year,
And how long
living
did
on a
it
yacht.
how long did it take you to actually you started sailing in Canary Islands and then the next spot
Yeah.
from the Canary Island, what was the next destination?
That was the Cape Verdean Islands outside
Okay.
Senegal.
Yeah, Cape Verde.
Uh,
In
yeah, and
German.
then there
Uh-huh.
are some small islands in the Atlantic called Fernando de Noronha. It's a bit like Galapagos, just in the Atlantic side, with its own kind of animals and marine habitat and so on. So that
Wow.
was kind of a jumping stone where we could get fresh water and so on.
How many
And
people
then
were
to,
living there in these islands?
I don't know,
Small.
100 maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
So, and I think mainly it was marine researchers
Hmm.
because they
Hmm.
were studying marine life,
Hmm.
because they had their own marine atmosphere, yeah, way of. But it was a great experience also to come to those islands, and I think also living on a yacht is it's a different life because you are forced to work or be slow, because when you are on a yacht and if you are moving, well, it's like 6 knots you're moving with, so everything takes long time. And I think that was good for me to again slow down,
Yeah.
uh, have and again having some great natural experiences, like when you are in the Atlantic and you are close to equator, when it's night, then it's black dark,
Hmm.
absolutely completely black dark, and that also make the Milky Way and the stars and so on. So
Mm.
they're really shining and they're really bright, and like at you. Uh, so that was some really great experiences with that. And also like when you are three people, there has to be one people steering the boat, at all
Yeah.
times.
Oh, wow.
So
So you had to change and take
yeah,
shifts.
we had test shift, yeah. And when you are when you're standing with a steering wheel in the middle of night, everything is completely black, and
It's also
then you
scary,
can,
huh?
yeah, at first it's a bit scary because you can't see anything.
Yeah.
But at least when you're out in the Atlantic, there's probably not a lot you'll bump into. But it is a bit scary in the beginning.
Wow.
So
And how much time did you spend on the open waters?
well, we took it in stretches. So the longest stretch was something like 2 weeks or 17 days because we found those islands on the way.
Mhm.
So where we could have a small break and maybe some additional, get some fresh water and so on.
Was any
So
one of you like an experienced sailor before?
yeah, yeah. That the guy who had the boat, he'd done
Okay.
the trip before,
Okay.
and
Wow.
the other guy,
Wow.
yeah, and the other guy, he was also an experienced sailor. I know how to sail also. I learned that at a folk high school, but I
Hmm.
did not have that much
Hmm.
experience that they had.
Yeah. Wow. And then
Uh,
there's nothing out there. There's no, I can imagine like you're suddenly bumping into whales or sharks on big ships or anything.
yeah, well, whales we did see once in a while. They were
Mm.
curious coming next to the boat. Dolphins we saw pretty
Yeah.
often, and something that was a bit annoying were I don't know the English word, flying fish. Is that they called
Oh,
fish with
yeah.
wings?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
they bump into the sails because when they come above the water, then they bump into the sail and make a noise, and then they get blood all over the place because they get squashed and so on. So they were a bit messy when we were hit by these flying fish. But that was fine. But we got
Wow.
used to it. Big ships, like there were some big ships, like big container ships, moving from like Europe to South America.
Hmm.
Once in a while, we
Hmm.
saw them, and one experience was often they were sailing much faster than we did, so they're always coming from behind. So we didn't see them
Yeah. Yeah.
ahead
Of
of us.
course.
We had to look. Is there anyone trying to
Overcome or
to?
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh,
What an
but
experience. Hmm.
Yeah, and then I think one thing we did not have any like satellite contact and so on, and weather forecast is something on a yacht you are interested in. So when we did see like a big container ship, we tried to call them on the VHF radio. Could you give us a weather forecast for this area?
And it
So that
was
was a
even the
way.
time, I mean, I don't know, on open waters, there's probably also no mobile phone working, but it was even
Uh,
before the time that we had any smartphones, right? So it was a
yeah,
completely
yeah,
different life back then.
yeah. Like regular phones, they maybe work like 30 kilometers from a coast. VHF radios 30, 40 kilometers from the coast, and then you are on your own. You can have a high frequency radio. You can sometimes get a connection to somewhere, but it's definitely very unreliable to get those connections. We did not have a satellite phone or something like that at that time.
Wow.
So I guess today it's a lot more secure because
Yeah,
you can have
yeah.
satellite phones and
Probably,
so
I
on.
think a lot of sailors would say nowadays, "Oh my God, serious? I would never do this
Yes.
without any protection or any, electrical gear." But what an
Mm.
adventure, really, what an adventure, Sven. And what would you
It
say?
was.
Um, were there scary moments, or were you kind of getting also maybe or getting seasick or anything like that? Or were there any moments where you, all the three of us, being in a very small place together, like having any
Yeah.
conflicts or something like that? How did that look like?
Yeah, I was not sick, and I guess when you live on a yacht, you get used to all the movements. So it's more when you get to shore and everything is not moving, then it's a bit wobbling, walking. It is tight being three-person on a boat that's 12 meters long and like 3 meters wide. Sometimes in temperatures above 40,
Oof,
it can be
smelly
tense.
and sweaty.
Yeah. But it worked okay. But sometimes one had to take it's one's own space and then just not talk to somebody else. But
Mhm.
it worked okay. But it's not uncommon on these Atlantic cruising that there will be discussion problems and so on. But it was okay on this yacht. I know another yacht where they did not get along that well. So, and I guess being calm and not kind of talk before you think, that helps a lot in those situations. So
Mhm.
and be very understanding and forgiving and maybe not too demanding. Like, yeah, well, we are here and we should cook something, maybe to something basic. Maybe we should skip the more advanced French cooking till we get to shore and so on. But it was okay. But there definitely a learning experience in being very close to other people for a long time. And then when we get to some islands, we could take some turns, and some could go to inland and so on for some time, while the other one took care of the boat. That was also kind of a relief, which is common on these long-term yachts.
How long did it take you in total, do you remember, from the Canary Islands to South America?
That was in total half a year.
Only on the
I ended
boat?
up, yeah, on the boat, yeah.
You were sailing for
Uh,
half a year?
Yeah, but sometimes we stayed like 1 week in a marina and said, well, it's nice here. Should we stay 1 week more and so on?
Okay, wow, yeah,
So
what an adventure. And where did you end up in South America? What was the harbor you were actually arriving at?
that was in Belém, which is in
Mm.
the Amazon River. So that's where I ended, and the yacht they continued to the Caribbean. But then I decided to go further on in South America, exploring more of the central part of the Amazon River. Went on a small freighter boat to Manaus, a 1 week
Mm.
tour in local life and meeting.
Brazil is
And
amazing.
yeah, and I think the Amazon is a great place also with a lot of mud and a lot of insects, but really great plant and nature and experiences and so
Mhm.
on. And also meeting, I remember I met a guy who lived in kind of a church community based on a German guy from the 17th century who created its own Christian something,
Uh-huh.
and they lived out in the Amazon, and you should come and stay with us, and so on and so on. So that was kind of an
Hmm.
I don't think I should go there, but it was interesting to talk to such people.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
and then continued to Bolivia,
Hmm.
also a great place. I really like Bolivia. It's so friendly people, and it's
Hmm.
kind of um, yeah, it's those mountains people in Bolivia. A bit of them was some resemblance to the people living in Nepal for some reason.
Hmm.
And then to Chile,
Hmm.
where I, on the way, had found out that there was an overland tour departing from Santiago. So that was my first experience with overlanding, which
Hmm.
is living in a truck with tents and mattresses and cooking on the way. So
What we
that was
did in South Africa, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
my first one in an overland truck. So that was 2 months in an overland truck in South America. Again, living together with, I think, 14 or 15 people from all over the world in a very small area. Like a truck is not that big when you are living together, but again, experiencing a lot together, talking, have long talks with people from many places of the world. It was really
Yeah.
great. And the nature in South America, it's
Oh.
so
Hmm.
nice. And in Chile, that's kind of on the west side of the Andes, where the mountains are also really, really high. So there are a lot of fjords. It's a bit like the west coast of Norway,
Hmm.
just the mountains are a lot higher or taller. And again, it was the truck driver or the guide we had. He was kind of a former British helicopter pilot, so
And
he could
interesting
also tell.
stories again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he was kind of used to if everything break down or the truck break downs, he can fix everything. So that was kind of necessary because the southern part of South America is really, really uh, rural and pretty
Hmm.
much nobody living down there.
Hmm. What is
Um,
the difference for you, or what was it at that time? The major difference you realized between Asian or Southeast Asian culture and people and South American culture and people?
I definitely think like Argentina and Chile, they're kind of European in mentality. That was very clear to me. I did not know that before. Whereas Brazil, that's kind of its own it's its own way of their own culture. But I think compared to like Japan is so different because there's so much kind of properness, respect, faith, and so on. Whereas in Brazil, everybody is just open and you can talk to them. That was definitely one of the differences.
And Indian and Nepalese people, how would you describe that and the difference between South American?
I think Indian are also very different. I think like the Chile and Argentina, that's kind of it could be Europe basically.
Yeah.
But Brazil and Bolivia, that's kind of the living close to nature, not expecting much kind of wealthiness, but still get things to work and so on. That's also what I experienced in Brazil. And I think also like the northeast of Brazil and the Amazon, that's kind of the more poor area of
Yeah,
Brazil
exactly. Yeah.
compared to like Rio and Sao Paulo, where I came later, which is kind of they could also be Europe, in fact, because of the mentality, the building, the houses, the jobs, and the people, and the education, universities, and so on in the southern part of. But I think it's a good question about India, and I'm not really sure what I should answer on that one.
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
Would you go back there?
yeah, definitely, definitely. I have not been to Peru, and I would definitely like to go to Peru and the high mountains in Peru. That's a big wish for me. So, uh, but I have not done that yet. But it could be project life number two.
Yes,
So,
exactly. And
so
would you rather go back to Southeast Asia or rather go back to South America?
I think Asia is so intriguing to me, and there are so many different things in Southeast Asia. That's something I will experience more. And also one of my all-time favorite is going to New Zealand. I never been to
Mm.
New Zealand, so
Ah, yeah, that's also on my list still.
yeah.
Yes.
So take
Uh,
like a month or 2 months or something like that, going to with maybe with an auto cam and go yeah in the mountains, go trekking and so on. That would be really really nice. And Australia, I've never been to Australia either, so I hope I'll be able to go there as well. But New Zealand and some of the island in the Oceania basin, that would like Fiji, Tonga, and so on. That would be something I would like to. Yeah, in fact, I went the South American trip was a bit further. I went to the southern part of like Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire, and then also to Paraguay and to Carnival
oh,
in Rio
yeah.
again. So that was kind of the again a great experience and a funny experience was that I think the hotel rooms, which has been ordered a long time before, they got lost in some ways. We had to find out some other way, and finding hotel rooms in Rio at Carnival is difficult, but that was a travel agent who had to do that. So a lot of surprising stuff on the way. Yeah, and then again on the way, I had talked with my parents, and my parents at that time were uh, older, and they had just sold one of the farms. My parents had two farms, so the big one has been sold, and then they had more time. And then I had convinced them, well, you should come to the US. So I invited them to the US. So on the way back from South America, we went to the US and went on some road trips for like 3 weeks in the US. And I think that was a really, really good experience for my
Nice.
parents to see like California and Grand Canyon and Las Vegas and so on. So we had a
Traveling
great
together is
time
also, I
there.
think, a
So
bonding moment for the parents and the child, let's say
yeah, yeah,
so. And wow, and
yeah,
then I
yeah,
think I remember you were kind of around your 30s, you got back to Denmark. So the whole trip from Southeast Asia, sailing South America, then the US with your parents was about 1.5 years long. Hmm.
yeah, that's
Wow,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. And then I came back and then I
Yeah.
needed to earn
At
some
one point
money.
we have to, yeah.
Yeah. So I started working in the military again, at least part-time. And then I had decided instead of continuing with my part-time program in business, I would take a 2-year full
Hmm.
year
Hmm.
program instead and get a master's degree in business administration. So I signed up for such a program at university in Fynen in Odense, and got my master's degree in business administration there, including a stay for half a year in Norway, which has also been one of my
Really?
favorite countries. I like the Nordic mentality, and especially the one for people from Norway. I think Norwegians and Danes are culturally, mentally kind of on the same wavelengths in many ways. Even though Scandinavians are very similar, there are also differences. So, but I got my master's degree, and I got some more to the intellectual side, more kind of research-based one, reading really, really thick books, scientific papers, and writing stuff, and so on. And I think that was good for me because that raised also what I thought I could do, and in another subject than engineering. So now it was more kind of in business administration, but it was within international management. That was a specialization, and that's because I thought at that time also the international part was
Yeah, I
fairly
can
important
imagine
for
after
me.
such a trip. Yeah.
Uh, and part of such a program is also working with and understanding the cultural differences and working with that in a corporate context. So, and then I had some hands-on learning from my travel and so on. So
And
it
what
was
would
a
you
good
say? I mean,
combination.
traveling for 1.5 years, completely, as you said, have no plan, traveling on the sea for such a time, and then suddenly going back to Europe, life, having structure, having a study plan, being in routines. How was that for you?
Yeah,
Hmm.
that was tough. But on the other side, I think also it was like going back to universities. It's not like from 8 to 4 you are at university. You have some stuff you have to plan yourself and organize and get stuff done. And I could dive deep into some details, which is not possible in a company because you don't have the time for it. So it was okay for me to do that. But I must also say that something that challenged me was kind of the focus on the more
Hmm.
kind of scientific side of business administration. I
Hmm.
wanted the
Hmm.
applied side of it, not so much writing
Hmm.
advanced
Hmm.
papers on something like that. So I think I challenged some of the professors at some time about that. So when we learn stuff, okay, how do we use that in a company? Because I also been working in a company. So I didn't really want just to learn something just to learn it. I wanted to
Hmm.
know for why. And I think that's, I could see some of the difference to some of those at university who came straight from gymnasium. They did not really challenge that,
Hmm.
but I did challenge that. But I think
Makes
that
also
was healthy
sense
for
that you
me
do
as
your
well.
master's degree at a later stage, huh? With some more life experience and also working
Yeah,
experience that you really know where you focus on. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. But it was okay, and I met some great people again, and took some elective courses like in European integration and European economy and so on. Again, very, very different subjects, but it was, yeah, trying to scratch a bit into some other
What did you learn about
areas and so
yourself in
on.
that time when you were
Uh,
back at the normal everyday life?
I think one thing was that like sometimes I wanted to do stuff details, and maybe I got a bit back into some of the stuff from earlier where I wanted to it should be correct and so on. And maybe that was not so good. Maybe I should be a bit more reluctant to detail sometimes. I think that's it's a trait of me I'm working a bit with. I do not
Hmm.
need all the
Knowing it
details
all,
all the
yeah.
time. It do not, and the grades do not
Oh,
need to
I
be that
understand
high
that
and
I am
so
kind
on.
of that person too. I really feel that too. But how is the Svend before this big trip and then compared to the other Svend after this big trip in terms of studying and being in this corporate world again? What would you say was the biggest change for you that time?
I think I got a more kind of reflection on wider discussion areas and also people and how countries work and so on. Before I probably was a bit more narrow-sighted because I had not visited so many places. So I think I got some more experience, perspective on corporate life, life in general, uh, and also accepting, understanding challenges, differences of all kinds. I guess I was a bit
Mm-hmm.
more robust
Mm-hmm.
also and
Mm-hmm.
resilient to changes. I didn't take stuff so much personally anymore after that. And I said, well, it will probably work anyway. So I'm not kind of I need to get into a schedule or something like that. No,
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably find a way in this. I've done that so many times before, and I guess that's a learning for me that I can probably find a way through it. Whatever the
Nice.
life
Some
will offer me, I'll
optimism and
find a way
some
through it.
positive hope about things. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. So, and I guess then I went back to the corporate life.
Now for 20
Uh,
years, huh? It's
but
like almost 20 years now. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The last 20 years that's been in corporate life, working mainly with management in with innovation within IT. I thought at the beginning I will never go into the IT area, but now I ended here, at least for now. I don't know where it will end, uh, but that has also been interesting because I can see those companies, we are providing value to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people around the world, and that's been interesting. And the last three companies has been mainly focused on
Mm-hmm.
Scandinavia, but with vendors from all over the world. And when one is working within IT, as I'm now, we have a lot of colleagues
Mm-hmm.
from India because India is providing a lot of
Yeah.
competent resources. So I'm working together with people from especially India and the Baltics and Balkan and so on every day. And I think that's a great experience. And I think also, like having lived in India, I can probably
Yeah.
sometimes better understand what is it that's between the lines and so on, instead of, oh, he said that, yeah, but maybe you
Mm-hmm.
should
It really
consider
helps in the
this and this and
intercultural
this,
context,
because
right? Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, 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 and that's also backed up by the the master's degree in business with the international aspects because we learned some
Mm-hmm.
of the theories behind it. And that has given
Mm-hmm.
me some ballast I
And now
think I
you work as
use
a
every
leader. How
day.
many people are you
So
leading?
I'm right now I'm not a people leader, but I'm
Projects.
a
Mm-hmm.
leader
Mm-hmm.
of programs. Yeah, I've been leader of people also before. So right now my current program is fairly small, so that's something like five, but it has been up to 50 at some times. And that's a lot when you have all in
Yeah.
direct reference. Uh, but it's okay. And right now I'm working with transformations, transforming a large IT organization where I have part of it
Mm-hmm.
I'm responsible for. And transformation, that's mainly working with people,
Yeah, of course.
even
And
though
that's
it's in
what
an
you've
IT
been doing a
company.
lot on all your travels as well, right? So, what is it if I look at you again from
Yeah,
farming to the US to military school, then all your trips around the world, and then the corporate life? What would you say is something that you really learned about yourself in terms of leading? What is a skill that you bring into your leadership role?
I think what characterized me is that I see it's important that is one is helpful to other people, and that will bring followers. That will bring followers also, and that's a lot easier to lead a project or an organization if one has trust from people. That's one of the
And
main
how would
things
you say? How would you
I've
say are
experienced and
you
learned.
building this trust?
Yeah, I'm really trying that. So those that are kind of really goal focused and we should do this and earn that many millions and so on, and working in silos and so on, that's not my style. I try to look at the bigger picture. Why is this company working? What is it, the objective we want to work at, and look at it a bit more holistic. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's characteristic for me, and that can be challenging
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to have that viewpoint. But I think, and again, probably from a military career, we have something that has to work, and we have to work together on it, and we have some objectives we have to reach. So if we are just focusing on own or one's own department's areas, it won't work. We have to be flexible to fulfilling what is needed. In the same time, or similar to at the farm, well, if there's a harvest or there's something with the cows, we have to do it together. Even though maybe I would like to go to football, well, the cows run out of the fence, we have to focus on that. And I think that's
What was one of your
responsibility
biggest, if you
also.
think about the last 20 years, what was one of the biggest challenges you had within these corporate companies, also in your position?
That's a good question. Uh, I think going into an area where IT fills a lot and I'm not educated within IT, that's something I had to work with. Usually I know the material stuff underneath it, but here as a leader, I do not know exactly what my employees are doing. I know it in general, but I cannot do what they do. They are the expert within the hardcore IT stuff. I can give some overview, some guidance, some support, and so on, but I cannot make an banking IT program.
Were there
I
any,
cannot do that.
yeah, were there any
And that's something,
insecurities about that then? Or how did you deal with it?
no.
Hmm.
I trust people, they know what
Great.
they're doing. And I hope they trust that what
Hmm.
I'm doing as a leader.
And how would you describe
Uh,
your military experience? What is it? What you took away from this leadership training you got there? What is it? The essence of that? What you're applying today in your work life?
I think it is understanding colleagues, people, but also understanding my superiors and what their objectives are. So I think it's about understanding people. That's the main thing I got from it. It's also setting up some goals and reaching some goals with the help of other people. I think that's also really, really important for me. And then I think that the bonding, both in the military and other places, you have to have a team, not a bunch of individuals working
Hmm.
on a project. That's important to me, but it's not always easy in practical terms. And sometimes I think the corporate world we make some barriers
Yeah.
for ourselves, uh, which is not necessarily supporting the individual or the company's goals, because we're looking at individual targets and individual preferences and so on, and not always looking at it as a big team where we have to deliver on an object or objective. So, and that's something I try to
If
change.
you would have your own company
So,
now, or the one you're leading now would be yours, what would you change first?
uh, that's a good question. I think a bit of it is kind of, and that's in many organizations, bureaucracies. Oh, well, that's noise. Uh, I think bureaucracy is something I don't like. I know there has to be some bureaucracy.
Yeah,
I think there's
now
noise
it's
from
your
my
neighbor,
neighbor.
not my neighbor, at least. It's okay.
Well, uh, but I think that can take too much energy out of both the team and an organization. If there's too much, we have to follow procedures and so on. And especially if it's something that's not really felt as needed. And I think, and that's maybe a characteristic of Europe, uh, we do get a lot of bureaucracy.
That's
Uh,
life.
uh, yeah, and I think we have too much of it. Some of it is imposed by the legislators and EU, uh, but there are too much of it, and it's not creating value for either the company, the employees, or
Mm.
the customers. So I think
Hmm.
that should be reduced, and it's a negative competitive factor
Hmm.
for a lot of
Hmm.
European countries. So I know legislation and so on can be good, and it is, but it can also be too much. So, and I hate leading a project where I have hard to see the real importance of why we're doing it. We are doing it maybe too comprehensive
Hmm.
compared to what is needed. Uh, and that's something I would
Hmm.
probably change. I could
Hmm.
get a bit tired of also. And I think also being in the corporate world, it's difficult to take big chances or to follow other ways because things takes time because things has to fit in a corporate world. That's something I sometimes envy small companies that, okay, there's a business opportunity here. Can we turn the ship that way? Yeah, let's do that. No, it didn't work. Let's turn it the other way. We can't do that in big
I think
corporations
this is obviously
where
really
I'm
something
working.
you and me probably because of our travels have really experienced how developing countries or small countries are really
Yeah,
more flexible and spontaneous in changing things, or they're not so, like structured and a bit
yeah,
rigid. That's really something we're taking away from it,
yeah,
like how it
yeah,
is also
yeah,
possible to lead or rule something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But on the other hand, it does create value, but I think it's just something that is characteristic for that type of companies. And do I want to be in the corporate world forever? I don't know. For now, I'm there, but I'm always trying to experience and what could other paths be. I have this theory of decisive moments of life where there are some points in life who has had a really big impact on me as a person, the choices I made. Some of them are deliberate choices from my side. Some of it is something that came from somewhere and I just picked the opportunity. And if I reflect on some of these points in my life, I always try to think, and in fact, it was my mentor some years ago who said, okay, if you look
Hmm.
like 10 years ahead, what would the decisive moments of your life be for the next 10 years? Will there be any? That was
Yeah.
a provocative question she asked me. And I think what she meant was that if I don't do anything, then it could be nothing for 10 years where I really change path as I done in my previous time. So I think those thoughts is something I'm
If she would
considering.
ask you now, what would you
So
say?
that's a good question. I don't know. Uh, my neighbor again. I don't know what it should be, but I'm really, really open for not being in the same situation for like 10 years. There has to happen something. Otherwise, I would
A
be
new
bored.
project life again.
So, yeah, it could be that there should be a project life number two and do something totally different, spontaneous for a year or two. I would love that. Uh, there's a lot of parts of the world I've not experienced and a lot of people I have not met yet. So hopefully
Mm,
I'll be able to do that in
mm.
one way or the
Your
other.
curious open mind is really
So
inspiring. Yeah, nice.
so yeah. So let's see what it brings. I'm taking a lot of training program in different areas and try to learn new stuff. Participating in a lot of networks and meeting other people and yeah, let's see what happened. I think there'll be a lot of opportunities, but it's a must. It should not just be standing in the same position for 10 years. I'll be bored and it will not be
Hmm. Hmm.
healthy for
With
me,
all
I
these
think.
different
So
stations in life and different experiences, and also now with leadership positions and everything, what excites you the most about the future?
I think it's exciting what's happening within quite a lot of areas. It could be like technology and so on. There's a lot of stuff happening within like green energy and AI, IT, uh, transport, a lot of within medical development and so on. So I think there are a lot of areas that are really developing a lot in these years, and it can be hard to see right in the point where we are now, as it was like in the old times, where I could not see like at the technical university. I got a email in '93. I couldn't really see why I should use it. I started to make home pages also in '93. That was kind of, well, that's maybe fun, but I'll never really use it for anything. But it has become really important. And I think if I look now, some of the stuff that I'm working or we are looking at now will maybe be really, really important within 5 or 10 years. Can just not see it right now. So that's why I'm trying to explore things that may become
Is
really
there a
important in
skill
the
from
future.
all the learnings you had in life that are you implementing now for the next step in your life?
Hmm. No, but I think being very curious and learn new stuff, that's something that I have learned and I will do. And I think like stuff where we have access to so much new knowledge via the internet has made it a lot easier to test that. So I'm trying to take a lot of courses also in the US and different podcast, webcast, educational program all over the world. I'm participating in that. Some of it is relevant, some of it is just because I'm curious. So knowledge has been easier accessible now, and it's also easier to explore that. Oh, sorry about my
Oh,
neighbor
good.
again.
That's life.
So yeah. Um, So I think that's something I'll explore, but I do not have a concrete plan for what will happen the next year, 2 or 3. So, but I'm trying out different things. So, uh,
And is there anything, if you have now two topics coming up and you have to decide again, is there any way how you make decisions for the future?
no, not really. But I'm kind of open to make a decision without having it investigated forth and back for many times or years. So to jump into new
Yeah, you're a
things, I'm
jumper
open
as
to
well.
that.
Nice.
So yeah, yeah. And I'm not married, I do
Mhm,
not have any kids, and so on. That's both
mhm,
maybe a good and a bad thing, but
mhm,
I'm not bound by something that others are. Uh, but yeah, but there
mhm,
are also downsides of that.
mhm.
But that's how life has turned out to
Is
me.
there anything
So,
you, about all these diverse experiences and adventures, is there anything you regret about your life?
hmm, I think maybe it would have been nice
Hmm.
to have had a family and so on. I think that's something I would have liked, but it has just never really
Hmm.
turned
Hmm.
out that way for me. So. But then I've been able to do a lot of other things, especially all the traveling and exploring stuff. That's what I see. Okay, that's kind of somewhat
Hmm.
a
I
compensation to
understand. I'm
that.
sorry to hear that that
So
was a wish that maybe didn't come true, but it definitely sounds like you're having a very rich and fulfilled life in any other aspect. So that is also very beautiful and inspiring.
yeah, yeah. And I think one really has to live life because there can happen something that will make it more difficult. It could be sickness or it could be a traffic accident or something like that. And I've seen many people during the years that suddenly have been faced with a serious problem and they could not do whatever they want. So I definitely think that one should not postpone
Hmm.
things too long because they can be hit by, yeah,
My dad
sickness
actually
or
died
whatever.
last summer of
So,
brain tumor, of cancer. And he
oh,
said when he died, all good things, he
sorry.
said when he died, well, he would actually, what he would have changed or done differently is that he would have lived his life more and not wait for retirement to do all the things he wanted to do. So I think it's a very
Yeah,
important memory for me and also a very important reminder for us in general for society that we
yeah,
have this life to live, right?
yeah. And I think it's so important. And if one experiences it too late, then it's difficult to redo. So, and learn from other people is one way of Yes, one way. What have they experienced? And some old people, they have some
Mm.
wise words, like your father had. So, so I think one should definitely do that. So, if it's just work, 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 with not really any decisive moments year after year after year, that's not the
Mhm.
way I want to live my life. I think it's okay for
Mhm.
many, but not for
If
me.
with all this wisdom
So,
you have now, if you could print or paint a giant billboard on the highway, maybe in the US, on the Route 66 or whatsoever, what would you
yeah,
print or paint or say on it?
uh, live life before it's gone.
Very true.
Uh, uh, I think that's important. And I think maybe another one could be
Mm.
trust people. So I think there are too much which are giving problem because individuals do not trust each other. Because and I think if people really trust each other and it's not kind of misused, there are so much potential
Mhm.
that is not used yet.
Beautiful. And then one more question I have. If you would go back to that 20 years old boy who was traveling through the US, what kind of advice would you give him now with all the experience you have in life?
That would that would probably just be that I can do a lot more than I thought I could do. So just jump into some big stuff and I will survive. I will be afloat in those things. And I think that would be
Yeah.
important to a lot of young people also. They can do a lot more than they think they can do. And they can navigate in it based on the learning they have from their childhood or from their learnings and so on. So I think that's it's so important. Don't feel the pressure or the society norms, and but know that you can do a lot more. I think it has changed. So I think a lot of young people today they they need
Hmm.
they need to hear that, and I think
Hmm.
they can
Hmm.
so much more than they're doing, and I'm really glad when I see some young people which are really surprising me. They do a lot of things and so on. Oh, great, you can do that. Fine. But I also see some that are not so fortunate or
Hmm.
believe in themselves. So,
Hmm.
so I think that's
I
important
mean, of course, we do
for young
have very
people.
different privileges around the world, right? And also upbringing and money, financial resources. And
Mm,
also, I think COVID and the current political situations also have a big impact on young people nowadays. So
yeah,
I think it's a very strong
yeah,
message to
yeah,
say again, hey, within the radar of your possibilities, try to do it. Try to make your dreams and wishes come true and jump
yeah,
and try things out. Yeah.
yeah. And a lot more is possible than one thing. It can be small things, it can be big things, but of course, circumstances can be hinder it. But there are a lot of options. So, but keep looking for them. If you're not looking for
Hmm.
it, it's difficult to find. So, uh, yeah, and it can be small things also. Uh, just like having a dog, for instance, that
Yeah.
can be a big thing for some, uh, uh, but can be very
Following the
rewarding.
heart. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
Sven, that was such a
So,
beautiful, enriching conversation. Um,
yeah,
one
you
more
too.
question I have. What you're taking away from this conversation actually today?
I think it gives me some reflection of my life. It gives some perspective I've not been having for many years. I've been forced to reflect on some of the learnings from the past to now. That's been challenging, and it's kind of difficult to give clear answers. Uh, but I guess maybe I do not
No.
need to have clear answers. So maybe it's okay to just have some ideas on what it is, because I got the learnings anyway, even though I
Mm,
can't explain them.
thanks. And how are
So,
you feeling now?
so absolutely great. So it's been really a great pleasure
Yes,
to
thanks.
talk with
Thanks
you.
to you for your
So,
openness and for all the beautiful stories you had to share. That was great. Yeah, I'm saying goodbye.
so yeah, bye bye.